Several days in a typical winter week, weather satellites over Africa record the same event. A tan river leaving the continent's west coast, flowing out over the Atlantic at the pace of the trade winds. It is hundreds of kilometers wide and can be followed for days, all the way to South America. It is not water vapor and not smoke. It is the Sahara itself, in transit. The Sahara is the largest hot desert on Earth, 4,800 kilometers across, touching 11 countries, covering nearly a third of Africa, and wind moves a staggering tonnage of it every year. But the remarkable fact is how concentrated the source is. The single dustiest place on the planet is one basin in northern Chad called the Bidele Depression, a pale scar of a lowland, modest on a map of the desert, that produces, in its season, on the order of 700,000 tons of dust in a single day. The Bidele can do this because it is not ordinary desert. It is the floor of a dead lake. For thousands of years, when the Sahara was last green, this basin lay under Megachad, a body of fresh water that, at its height, ranked among the largest lakes Earth has carried. Its waters were thick with diatoms, single-celled algae that build themselves shells of silica, microscopic geometry in glass. Generation after generation, the shells rained onto the lakebed and compacted into diatomite, a soft, pale rock that is, in effect, powdered glass pressed into sheets. Around 5,000 years ago, the climate swung, the rains moved south, and Megachad evaporated to the remnant now called Lake Chad, leaving its floor exposed. Thousands of square kilometers of dried lake life, light as chalk, waiting for wind. The wind arrives pre-aimed. Northeast of the basin, the Taibesti and Aneti massifs rise from the desert with a gap between them, and the winter trade winds squeeze through that gap the way a river squeezes through a gorge, accelerating into a low-level jet pointed directly at the Bidele. On strong mornings, the jet rakes the lakebed, bounces grains across the surface until they shatter and loft, and by afternoon the basin is feeding a plume visible from orbit. What was like bottom at dawn is over the Atlantic within days. Then comes the part that reads like a planetary accounting trick. The Amazon rainforest, for all its abundance, runs lean on phosphorus. Its ancient soils are heavily weathered, and every year the rivers carry a fraction of the nutrient away to the sea. Satellite measurement campaigns that track the dust in 3 dimensions have put the annual delivery of Saharan dust to the Amazon basin at roughly 28 million tons, and the phosphorus riding on it lands, by those estimates, in the same range as what the basin loses to its own rivers. Studies tracing the Plume's sources have pointed at the Bidele for a substantial share of it. On that arithmetic, the world's richest forest has part of its fertilizer bill paid by the skeletons of algae that died in an African lake before the pyramids, a desert provisioning a rainforest across an ocean. Honesty requires the footnote, and it is a good one. The chemistry is contested in exactly the way working science should be. Analyses of the dust's composition have argued that the phosphorus reaching the Amazon may owe more to other Saharan source rocks than to Bidele diatomite, and the budget's error bars are real. The river in the sky is measured fact. Precisely whose minerals do the fertilizing is a live question, and the answer is being worked out one sampling flight at a time. People have been intercepting this plume far longer than satellites. Sailors in the age of sail knew the dark sea, off West Africa, where dust dimmed the air and reddened the rigging. Charles Darwin, aboard the Beagle, collected the fine powder that fell on the ship and wrote it up, an account of dust falling on vessels in the Atlantic, wondering, correctly, how far it had come and how far it was going. The same dust hazes Caribbean sunsets, salts the surface ocean with iron, and ends, some of it, sifting down through the canopy of a forest that has never seen the desert it came from. At dusk over the mid-Atlantic, the river is still running, the floor of a vanished lake, airborne, halfway to its next continent.